All right, guys, welcome to the 2026 Law and Business Study Guide for the California Contractors State Exam by Paint Thinner Gang. I want to tell you guys if you guys are liking these series, right? I do this about once a year, and every once in a while I'll do different things on how to get your license and how to run your business. If you like it, go ahead and like it on the press the like button, subscribe, share it with your friends and family or anybody that you know that wants to get their license. Like I mentioned before, I don't charge any money for any of this. Obviously, I'm not a school. I'm not associated with any school or the CSLB. I just do this for free. Um, all this information again is free. You could find it online. You don't need a school for this. This is the law and business side of it. It's not exactly for the trade. So remember that for you to get your contractor's license, you need to take two tests. One of them is going to be your trade, which is the job you do. It could be anything. It could be plumbing, electrical, painting, drywall, whatever. And the other side of it is law and business. I'm going to get into what the law and business side of it is. I'm not going to get into your trade only because there's so many trades for me to do that I really can't give you guys the correct information because I don't know every trade. I'm personally a painting contractor, and I'm currently trying to get my general. But again, just because you're a general or a painter doesn't mean you're gonna know everything about drywall or about plumbing or framing, or concrete formwork or any of that. So my recommendation to anybody that wants to work on their trade, I recommend getting a book on your trade, learning how to read some blueprints, or going to an actual contractor prep school and just buying their study guide from them for the trade side of it. And obviously, if you're confident in your trade, which I would imagine you are if you're trying to get your contractor's license, then just study up on it. Try to improve what you can. And if you go to the CSLB website, if you go to their publication side, there's going to be one where it says study guide. That study guide will tell you all the references that they use to get that 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 portion of the test made. So they're gonna give you like use this book for this portion of it, and each trade has like 7 books, so you could go ahead and buy them all and read them, or you could just get a shortened down version of it. But that's pretty much it. So if you like again, support me if you can. I'll leave in the description some links to how you can help me. Support this channel. You could either donate by sending some Bitcoin to an address. You can buy me a coffee, or you can support me through the YouTube support button /thanks, and I'd highly appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So as I mentioned before, all this information is available online for free and through the CSLB website. To be clear, I'm not affiliated or involved in any school, license prep, or with the CSLB. My intention is to help tradesmen get their license and start working on their own legally. I will give you the rundown on everything you need to pass the law and business portion of the exam. I will create new questions and answer video series in the future. There are 2 tests when you're getting your license. One is law and business, and the other is a trade portion. Remember that you can buy books and obviously your own expertise in your own trade to pass that. I will make a series of books in the state recommends as well. So I'll go ahead and do that. I will do the study guide so you guys can check it out, or the resources that you can get for the study guide. You can probably buy some pre-made study guides through online services, but I'm not connected to any, so I will not recommend any for obviously legal reasons. My plan is to make these slides like an audiobook and viewing videos to learn at a faster rate. I don't charge a fee for these videos, but I do accept donations through Buy Me a Coffee or through the YouTube thanks button. So please like, share, and subscribe and support if you can. So before we start off on the actual trade or the actual business side of this study guide, I want to run down some questions and answers real quick for the most people there, because I already know you guys are going to give me a bunch of questions, and if you just pay attention to this from the beginning, most of your answers or most of your questions will be answered. So we're going to go down with the basic requirements to get a license, right? Who needs it, who qualifies, and who can pretty much have the process or who can start the process now, right? Obviously, there's some people that can't do it right away, but again, this is going to answer most of your questions. So, who needs a license in California? So before it used to be if you did any project worth more than $500, you needed a license. Now it's any construction project in California valued at $1,000 or more. That includes labor and materials. Requires a license. Okay, a license is also required regardless of cost if a permit is needed or if you have employees or workers. You do not need a license if the amount is less than $1,000 per project. No, you cannot split a large project into multiple projects if you choose to not get a license because um, so if you choose to not get a license for that reason, right? You can't do that because you'll cross that limit. You must always mention that you are, and again, you must always mention that you are not licensed in any advertisement for because if you do, you're getting in trouble. You must also follow all legal requirements such as taxes, permits, and business licenses in your area, even if you do not carry a contractor's license. All right, so let me get this. Let me kind of bring this down for a bit, right? So any person doing work in California with and that job crosses $1,000 or more, you automatically are required by law to have a license. Some people think that they can just charge for the labor and have the client buy the material. That's illegal. If you're caught by the state, you will get in trouble. So no, it does not matter if the client buys the material. If you cross $1,000, you need a license. Now, if there's ever a permit required or you have employees working on a job site, you again need a license. Okay, even if it's less than $1,000. Okay, so if it's less than $1,000, but you need a permit or employees, you need a license. Now, you do not need a license if it's $1,000 or less, right? But that you got to remember, that's labor and materials. Okay. Now, if you if you're charging, I don't know if you're a handyman and your average rate is like, I don't know, let's say $500 a day or something, right? And let's say it's like $100 in material for whatever reason, $600 a day. You still have to pay taxes. You still have to get city permits. It might not be a construction permit, but maybe a I don't know permit from like parking or something, or a business license from your city. You'll still have to have that, and obviously insurance, reliability insurance. You'll still need that, right? But for the test, just remember it's $1,000 or more. Who needs it? So who needs a license in California? So every license must have a qualifier, the person responsible for supervising the work. So remember that whoever is going to apply for the license, that person is known as the qualifier. Okay? Remember that because they're gonna give you this question, who's a qualifier? So remember that the qualifier or the person applying for the license needs to be 18 years or older and they need to have 4 years of journeyman level experience. The experience must be within the last 10 years of whatever they've done, right? Experience must be in the trade and the classification they're applying for. And you need to obviously pass the required CSLB exams for you to get it. All right. So pretty much if you do not qualify yet, you need to work under a licensed contractor, okay? Or choose someone else who qualifies to be your qualifier. So for example, let's say you don't have your license or you don't have the experience required, but somebody that you know does qualify for it, right? Well, if you don't want to go through all this of you taking the test, just get that person to, do the test for you, not illegally. What I'm trying to say is you're gonna set up a business with that person. I would recommend probably like an S corp. And I'm not a financial advisor or a business planner, by the way. I just want to get that clear. I don't want to get in trouble with any of you guys. But my personal recommendation would probably be like set up a corporation, have that person qualify for the exam, pass the exam, and you'll be like, I don't know, 50-50 partners or whatever. Or you could even pay that person 20% and they don't have to work anymore, right? It's just to get your business set up. But most people, I would recommend just getting your license. So again, you need all that. This will be on the exam, the qualifier portion, the time of experience. Now, if you've been a helper for 4 years, no, that does not qualify for a journeyman level experience. Now, you can risk it, but most likely the state is going to be like, okay, you got this amount of years, and let's say you're a helper for 2 years and you're trying to get your license, they're going to call you out right away. Now, if you're not working under a licensed contractor, that's fine. What you can do, let's say you get paid in cash or something, the state doesn't really care. What they want is somebody to just be able to legally establish a business so that they can start paying taxes, right? So what you can do is once you do your application, get a form that says like work experience certification, and all you do is just go ahead and contact all the clients that you worked for in the past. Have them set up some sort of like they could write you a letter saying that hey, he did this, da 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 da, and obviously have evidence such as pictures and have them sign off on it. You could also get your friends to sign off, but that's one way to get it if you're not working under a licensed contractor and that's paying you in payroll. So you're going to have to again verify your work experience. That's what I was mentioning in the past slide. It's called the certification of work experience. The form you'll use this. Obviously, the more forms you have of that, the more the better. The CSLB may randomly review your experience. So again, you have to make sure you have one enough of those forms that you could get, or if you have plenty of them, if you could add more to it, just for be prepared a little bit better. I had my boss sign off on that in the past, and I only had him sign off only because all my experience was pretty much recorded. I had pictures, I had payroll stubs for my paychecks. You know, I had them give me like a letter of employment, how long I've been working for them, that sort of thing. So you may need to prove your 4 years of work experience. So again, the tips for that would be have documents ready before applying. Have your W-2s, pay stubs, contracts, certifications, employer signatures. You can also get your friends, your clients, that sort of thing to do that. It's probably recommended if your friends are other contractors or like union members. A lot of times their recommendation letters are actually a little bit better rated than just a regular friend of yours. Obviously, he's not in the trades. You can also get clients to get a work experience form. So even if you have worked for cash or a personal check, the state only wants to know if you are qualified and responsible when it comes to being a contractor. Okay. I took a sip of coffee. Sorry about that. So who needs a license in California? Again, when you do all that, you're going to complete an application. It's called the original contractor's application. You must submit an official CSLB application, and you're going to probably get that through their website. Okay, you could print it out, so it's no big thing. Just go to cslb.ca.gov. You're going to go to publication/forums, and you could even search it up and just search for original contractor's license application. The only thing required on that is pretty much going to be your social security, obviously your name, but majority are going to want to put their social security. If you don't have a social security, right? So let's say you're not a U.S. citizen and you're not a green card holder, you can use your ITIN number. Okay, you don't need to be a citizen and you don't need to have a green card to become a contractor, right? The state doesn't care. All they want is for you to pay your taxes legally. Okay, that's all they want. So if you're scared of you not being a legal citizen, don't worry about it. Okay, the trust me when I tell you that the state, all they want is money, right? So, and as long as you're doing your projects and your jobs well, and you're doing everything legit, there should be no reason for you not to get it, honestly. Because if not, you're going to be working under the table, and it's going to be worse for the state. So you need to have your correct license classification. All that means is when you fill out that paperwork, if you've been doing plumbing, right? Let's say for the past 10 years, there's no reason why you should be applying for, let's say, an electrician's license or even a concrete finisher or a concrete form or whatever, right? Whatever you worked in the past, that's what you're going to be applying for. If you want to be a general contractor, the only thing that I would recommend that you're going to need for that is for you to, one, do framing and carpentry. That's the only thing that's required for a general contractor. You cannot be a painter and apply for your general contractor unless you've done carpentry or framing in the past. That's okay. So, and again, you're going to be needing your information, right? The qualifier information. That's the person applying to the license. All right, like I mentioned before, you do not need to be a U.S. citizen or a legal resident, also known as a green card holder, to become a licensed contractor. The state only wants contractors to be able to legally run a business. They do not care about the legal status of the individual. So anybody who is not here legally, that means you guys can get it. Okay, you guys can get your license. And obviously, that'll help you guys out in the future if you guys ever are able to qualify to get your green card or your citizenship. All right. Now we're going to talk about the fees. So when you submit your application, obviously the original fee for the application, okay, not for your license, but for the application fee, it's going to be $450. As of right now, maybe in the future it'll change, but as of right now, that's what the cost is. The fee is required before the exams are scheduled. Okay, so remember that it's $450 to start the application. You're still gonna pay a little bit more. It's gonna be around 700 and something, maybe 800 once everything's done. But just remember, it's around $450 for the application fee. Your fingerprints and background check. So after you're done submitting your application, they're gonna send you a form for you to get your background check done, like about maybe a week or two after you send your application, and you could pretty much do it anywhere. There's certain places that the state will give you like a little a website where you could check all the locations that you could do it at. I did mine like within like 5 minutes of my house, so they're all over the place. Like tax offices can do this. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so you guys could do it anywhere. So obviously the cost is gonna range depending on location. I think I paid like $90 for it, apart from the $450. So once that happens though, that's when you're gonna be scheduled to actually get your test done. And then if you guys pass it, that's when you get your license. So just just let me give you guys an idea what the fingerprint is. All it is a background check just to make sure that you don't have any like warrants for your arrest, yeah, you haven't done any crimes or that sort of thing. Now, if you ever been like convicted or you have some sort of crime in the past that you've been in trouble for, now that doesn't disqualify you from getting your license. Okay, the only time you're ever gonna get disqualified for like something you've done in the past, it's like if you've done something heinous, okay, like something super crazy. And even then, if you have expunged your record and you've been cool for a good amount of time, the state's lenient, so they're gonna let you pass. They're not gonna really trip on you or go after you for that sort of thing. They're just making sure that you're not some crazy person. Obviously, if you're going, you're gonna be going to people's homes. They don't want you to doing some crazy stuff to your clients. Okay. After all this is done, right? You're gonna go ahead and take your exam after you do your live scan and everything, your background check. The qualifier must pass 2 computer-based exams. Again, those are the law and business exams, and that's a trade exam, okay? There's some exam waivers available in certain situations. So what that means is sometimes people have experience from a different location, right? Or maybe they've done this in the past and they don't have to do it again. Or maybe you pass one test, but you don't pass the other. So you don't, let's say you pass your trade exam, but you don't pass the laws and business. What will happen is you don't have to take your trade exam anymore. You'll just have to take your law and business exam and you'll be pretty much, scotch free. You only have to worry about one exam. So it's not don't you guys don't have to worry about failing. You can take this as many times as you can. The only drawback is you'll have to wait for them to reschedule, and after a certain amount of tries, they'll just charge you like $100 or something for you to do it again. So it's no biggie. As long as you guys got the time and the money, you guys can take this test, hundreds of times. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so if you need a translator, The translators are available. I'll go into detail about that in some following slides for you. So if you speak Spanish, Mandarin, Chinese, Vietnamese, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's some translators for you. If they don't offer translators, you could even bring your own translator. The only thing is that person will just have to be checked and verified that they're not going to do the test for you, obviously, but you can bring a translator or ask for an in-house translator. All right. Once your license is issued, so once the exams are passed and the requirements are met, right? You've done everything you've needed, you're good. So additionally, from the $450 that they're gonna ask you for the application fee, for you to get your license and finally be able to start your business, you're gonna have to pay $200 if you're gonna be a sole proprietor. Now, a sole proprietor, I'll go into detail what that is, but that pretty much all that means is that you, the person applying, you're the business, okay? It's you, the individual. Or $350 if you're going to be a non-sole owner. If you don't know what that is, that's pretty much any business entity that is an LLC, a corporation, or a partnership. Okay? Now, other requirements may include, and pretty much they will include this, is a $25,000 contractor bond to be on file. That's for everybody. Okay, there's going to be some additional fees for the LLC and the corporation, but I'll go into detail what that is. But just remember that all these licenses need $250,000 contractor bond. What that means, a bond is pretty much like a safety net for the state, right? So what that means is you're gonna have $225,000 available. So for example, if you don't carry general liability, and let's say, I don't know, you break a client's window, right? You guys get into an argument. That person sues. He sues you, whatever. There's $25,000 available for that client or that individual to go after, right? Now, what'll happen is after they take that, whatever amount that is from you, you're going to be required to pay the bonding agency, right? Now, if you have general liability, you guys don't have to worry about this. They won't go after that money, but this $25,000 contractor bond is still required by the state, okay? They don't care if you have general liability or not. It's still required. There's another way of doing it. If you want to have $25,000 set aside and you put it in a different bank account, and so you have like an exemption from this requirement, you can do that. Now, it's like $100, $150 for that contractor bond. So some people don't worry about that. But if you have that money laying around, you'll save that much money annually, right? If you put it on the side. And I won't go into much detail what that is because I personally haven't done it. But if it's there for you, if you guys have that option, and you guys can look into that yourselves. But I'm just giving you guys what the state wants you to know for you to pass the test. So, workers' compensation insurance will also be required, okay? Now, if you have employees, there's no ifs or buts. It's gonna be automatically required because obviously you're gonna have to pay payroll, so it's by law you have to do it. Now, if you don't have workers, you can be I want to be clear, and you're a sole proprietor, you do not need workers' compensation insurance, right? Now, there's certain classifications that need it. So I'm gonna go into detail what that is. But if the test tells you if you don't have workers working for you, and you don't want to have workers' compensation, what must you do, right? And you're gonna put an exemption from workers' compensation, right? It's gonna give you that option. Now, there's, they're not gonna tell you, give me classifications that do not need workers' compensation, because there's like so many, but it's just the wording that they're gonna use. So general liability, again, by the state law, you don't need it. But obviously, if you're gonna be doing business, I'd recommend you have it because you never know. And you don't need it again. So pretty much after you have all those requirements set up, you paid your bills, you have your bond, you decide to get workers' compensation or not, or you decide to get general liability or not, that's when you'll be licensed. Okay, this process takes roughly 3 to 6 months. Most will be around the 3 month frame. It's not that long, so I don't see why anybody wouldn't get their license. And you don't need to live in California to acquire a license. Okay, we're gonna go into more details now, more specific details on questions, right? So, who can become a licensed contractor? So, any individual, right, must be 18 years or older, have a valid SSN or an I-10, and you must be able to run and supervise a construction business or have a qualifier who meets the requirements. So, the qualifier can be you or another person. Remember what I said in the past. You can use another person to get their license. You guys set up a business, have that person certify the business, or I guess get a license for the business, and you can run it as a partnership. But I wouldn't recommend getting a partnership. I'd recommend getting an S corporation and splitting the profits or the amount of work individually, right? So, who is a qualifier? Or who is the qualifier? The qualifier is the person who manages and supervises construction work and is responsible for compliance with the CSLB rules. The qualifier requirements must have 4 years of experience. Obviously, they must be within the last 10 years. And the reason I keep bringing up the 10 years is because the 4 years of experience and the 10 years specifically, they want you to know that will be on the test. So remember that. Experience must be in the trade they're applying for, obviously. So the experience can be as a journeyman, which is a journey person. So that means anybody who is able to be on the job site and be able to run the business by themselves. A foreman or foreperson, a supervisor, or any other licensed contractor. The reason they add that is because let's say you're a painter or something, and you want to get your drywaller's license. You can do that too. Let's say you're a drywaller and you want to get your general contractor, right? You could do that too. They just need someone with experience, and they also need someone that's applying to be able to. They want someone that works within that field to be applying for that field. If they see that you're a painter and you're applying to be an electrician, they're not gonna they're not gonna accept that. So, proof of experience, all experience must be verifiable. People with first-hand knowledge of the work must certify the work experience, and they must sign the certification of work experience form. Obviously, like I mentioned before, it could be your friends, that are your co-workers, I mean. It could be other contractors, other supervisors, like let's say you work for let's say you work for a sub, and you're working with a supervisor that's working under a general, they could sign off too. It could be an inspector for the city. It could be clients that you've had in the past. It could be other tradesmen, right? Other people from within different industries. It could even be suppliers, right? Let's say you work for there's like a construction supplier for you, right? And I don't know, let's say you've been buying 10,000, 2,000, or $20,000 a month of material. They could sign off on that too, and they can verify, hey, yeah, he runs this amount of money, per month. We this is what we sell per month. I certify that this guy at least he's buying material to certify it's not going anywhere. I guess he's going somewhere. All right. Who does the CSLB license, right? So we're gonna go into detail now about what a sole proprietor, partnership, a corporation, and joint venture are. But pretty much, the CSLB issues licenses to the following business entities. Like I said before, a sole proprietor, which is a sole owner. They also do them to partnerships, corporations, joint ventures, limited liability companies, tribal businesses. So try to have, before you guys set up any or before you guys submit any application to the CSLB, my recommendation for you is to have a business entity set up before you get your license, right? It's gonna be a smoother transition for you. So what I mean by that is let's say you're gonna start, I don't know, like a cabinet company, right, or something, right? A cabinet making company. And you don't know what you want to run. You don't know if you want to have make it a sole proprietor or a corporation or an LLC or whatever, right? Try to have that figured out before you submit your license, right? So if you see that you have plenty of work and work is year round and or at least you're working like 10 months, 11 months out of the year constantly. My recommendation for you is to have like a corporation set up already before you apply. That doesn't mean you have to work under it. It just means it's there so you could certify your corporation, okay? And be legally allowed to work within your corporation right away. Because if you don't do that, what's gonna happen is you're gonna pretty much automatically get your sole proprietor, which is fine. It's what I did. The only problem is if you have constant amount of work and everything's going cool, everything's going right with your business. Later on, you're gonna have to change it to a corporation because of tax advantages, right? So figure it out what route is right for you, and then once you apply, you don't have to go through any more steps. It's already set up for you. And another thing, I just want to bring this up that I didn't do when I first got my license, and I mean I had no advice from anybody, so I went, I went through it like with being blind, you could say. Everybody who is using a name other than their personal name, they're all required to have a DBA. If you don't know what a DBA, it's also known as a doing business as. All it is it'll be you doing work under a fictitious name. So if you're going to be a sole proprietor, right, or sole owner, let's say your name is John Smith, right? But you want to change it to, I don't know, let's say Rigid Painting or something, right? Like that's going to be your license, that's going to be your company name, and you're still a sole proprietor because let's say you don't get a lot of work, so you want to keep it small for the time being. The state that the CSLB is not going to recognize rigid painting, right? Neither is your county as you, and the bank isn't going to let you open up a business account with them because you're not using your name. So for you to be able to legally run your business, you're gonna have to get doing a DBA, right? So it's gonna be John Smith DBA, which means doing business as Rigid Painting, right? So that's the only way you're gonna legally be allowed to work. And once you get your license, the first thing I recommend is doing that. Now, the only way you're gonna get your DBA too is if you verify that no one else is using your name. So you're gonna have to, whatever county you're in, if you're in LA County, San Bernardino County, you're gonna have to go to your county recorder and figure out if your business name, the one you want to apply for, is being used. If it's not being used, then go ahead and use that as your DBA. Set up your name, set up your information, do the whole licensing thing, and then from there, go to your bank, set up a business account, and whatever. Then you're straight. Because if you don't do that, what I did is I got my license, I got everything set up, and then little by little I started, oh crap, I need this, I need that, I need this. And I couldn't even set up a business account because I didn't know any of the steps. I had no one to guide me. So sorry, I went on a little tangent right there, but there's so much information that I'm trying to give, and I feel like I'm running out of time. So who must be licensed as a contractor? Remember what I said? The CSLB requires any construction work that's valued at $1,000 or more, and it has to be combined labor material. They all need a license. Okay, so it's illegal to split a job into smaller parts to avoid the $1,000 limit. Who specifically must be licensed, right? So a license is required before bidding for general contractors, subcontractors, and specialty contractors. Anyone engaged in home improvement work. So if anybody is doing home improvement, they all need a license. Okay, unless it's under the $1,000 limit. But even then, if you need permits or whatever, you need a license. So is anyone exempt from having a contractor's license? So small jobs under $1,000 or less, you do not need a license if all of the following are true. The cost is less than $1,000. That's labor and material. There's no required permits. And if you don't have any workers or employees that are used, you cannot split the jobs under pretty much to stay under $1,000 limit. You cannot do that. So government government and public works, um, pretty much they're exempt from this. So if there's an employee that's working for the government, the city, they don't need to be licensed, obviously. If you're under a specialized industry, such as oil and gas operations, if it's performed by the owner or the lessee, you don't need that. Security alarm companies operators, they don't need a contractor's license because those guys are operated and they're licensed through the Bureau of Security and Investigation Services and fire alarm companies. So the operators, right? The companies themselves must still be licensed, but not the operators. So satellite antenna installers on residential properties, those guys must be registered with the Bureau of Household Goods and Services. They are not under the CSLB. Retail carpet sellers. So if you're a carpet seller, you do not need a license. However, the person that's doing the installation is required to be licensed, but not the seller. Okay. So owner builders exemption. So any owner builder may be exempt if the strict rules are followed. So um, if you don't know what the owner builder is, it's pretty much anybody who's doing work on their own property or they're remodeling their own property, that sort of thing, or they're building their own home too, right? So if a home improvement existing residence is there, so that's if it's there, you're not doing any ground up work, none of that. If the home is your principal residence for 12 months before completion, work is done before selling the home. You act as an owner builder on no more than two structures in 3 years, then you do not need to get a license, right? Or if it's a new single family residence construction, that means you're building a complete home. You may be exempt if either option applies. Option one, you do the work yourselves, right? You perform the work yourself, or you hire employees and you pay them wages. And when it says paid wages, it means legally, right? That means payroll. And you do not sell the home for 1 year after completion. The option two would be for licensed subcontractors. So if you're building your own home, but you do your own hiring, the only thing you're doing is managing, let's say, the construction progress, but you hire pure licensed contractors, then you don't got to worry about getting your general license or any of that, right? You do pretty much, and you do not sell more than 4 homes per year. So let's say, remember that option A would be for home improvement. That means that's your principal residence. You live there. You do not need a license for that. If pretty much if you're building it before 12 months, that sort of thing. This honestly, they're not really going to give you a test on that. They're really going to give you on the small portion job side of it, the carpet side of it. They might ask you about a homeowner builder if they're required to have a license. Just remember that it's no, they're not required as long as they fit within these requirements. All right, what happens if I contract without a license? So here's some consequences for you. So general consequences: if you contract for work of $1,000 or more without a CSLB license, you may face criminal charges, so a misdemeanor, jail time, fines, and administrative penalties. The first offense, the penalties for that would be for your first offense. Penalties can include up to 6 months in jail. So it doesn't mean you're going to get 6 months, but it's up to, and or a $5,000 fine. Administrative fines range from $200 to $15,000. It all depends on what the severity of your first offense is. If you're repeating offenses, that means you're going to get harsher criminal penalties, higher fines, and increased enforcement actions by the CSLB. So if you're in a disaster area, so for example, the fires that recently happened about a year ago over here by the Palisades in La Altadena area, if you contract with a license in a state or federally declared disaster area, pretty much charges may be elevated to a felony if you don't have a license, and penalties are significantly more severe. We'll go into detail on more consequences in later slides, but just remember that if you don't have a license, you're pretty much at the whim of what the CSLB wants to give you in terms of punishment. And if you operate within a disaster area, and a disaster area doesn't have to be you're like in the middle of it, right? It could be you're like a block, 2 blocks away from those fires, right? And it's been like a year. It doesn't matter. They still consider that a disaster area. So If you're painting a home, right, or you're building, or you're, I don't know, let's say you're installing a roof because it got damaged by the smoke or the fire, but you're not at the epicenter of that, then you could still be in trouble with the CSLB, and they might even give you a felony. So, you might want to be careful on that. All right. So, what kind of work experience is required? You're going to see some of this information repeated. Reason being is because I had to get some information from different sources, and I don't want to go through the whole shortening everything down, only because you're going to need this information, so it might as well just be repeated constantly, right? So what kind of work experience is required? Basic experience requirements. The licensed qualifier must have 4 years of journeyman level experience, must be within the trade, must be within the last 10 years. And again, here's the people that can give it to you. Like we said before, the journeyman, four-person supervising employee, and licensed contractor. Who is a journey person, right? And now we're going to go into detail what that person is. So a journey person is someone who is not a trainee. They can perform the trade without supervision, or they have completed an apprenticeship program. So if you have been through a union apprenticeship program, you automatically qualify. Okay, so because you've been trained exactly what how the industry requires. So who can verify the work experience? Someone other than an applicant must verify the work experience. So acceptable verifiers include employer or supervisor, fellow employee or journey person, a licensed contractor, a union representative, a building inspector, architect, engineer, business associates, and lastly, if you're self-employed, a homeowner or clients that you've had in the past. The verifier must have personally absorbed the work and complete and sign the certification of work experience form. Documentation requirements. So the CSLB may request proof at any time. So, and they randomly do this, right? Sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. Sometimes like one person won't even include the correct information, but for whatever reason they don't check his info out, and you might have like 20 forms that you've sent out, and they'll still call you up for whatever reason. But it's just the way it goes. So you must be prepared when this happens. So you're going to want to have your pay stubs from your past, from your company that's been paying you. You're going to want to have some contracts, letter of employment, some tax records, right? So whenever you've done your taxes, certifications. So if you have some sort of like certificate from an apprenticeship, I don't know, let's say you got some training through a college, some through a trade school, you're going to want to have that, or other supporting documents such as like OSHA's and that sort of thing, first aid. Are there educational requirements? No, there's not. There are no required classes or degrees or even a high school diploma for you to want to apply to get your license. So a lot of times this route is for people who don't have a lot of times other options. And that's not to say that most people don't. I'm just saying if you see that in your life you don't have options of getting a good job because of your degrees, or you don't got a high school diploma or your education level, if you can do a good job in this industry and you can keep good communication with clients, you might not be rich. You might not be one of these super high end contractors, that make millions of dollars, that sort of thing. But you can make yourself, 100K to 200K and live comfortably, very comfortably, if you know how to, communicate with people and that sort of thing. You like even me, right? Like the only thing that I did was graduate high school. I never went to college. I'm not rich by any means. I went the non-union route. So if anybody's worked non-union, they know that there's a lot of bullshit in it, a lot of low pay. So, I did this just to try to improve. And even now, like I'm not a full-time contractor where I'm over here, like, just working for myself. Sometimes, work is slow. Um, my communication skills, they need to improve, obviously. But this is something that's kept me like from being, I guess, low wage to improving a lot to from where I was. So you know if everything goes right, on a certain project, I could make anywhere from $40 an hour to 125 an hour, right? It all depends on what the project is. And and I don't have any employees, so you know It's a good starting point for anybody who doesn't have any education. Um, so can education or training replace work experience? Yes. Now, not all of it, but partially. So the CSLB may grant credit for completing apprenticeship programs, technical training, and education from accredited schools. Um, Requirements for that, if you want to put that in for some credit, you need to have at least some written documents, some official transcripts and certificates must be submitted. There's no credit for high school classwork, so if you had some sort of like shop work or classes, that doesn't count. All requests reviewed are pretty much on a case by case. So if they see that your stuff isn't really like important, they're not going to really give you any credit for that. Important rules. So pretty much, even if you do have that classwork and it's all there, every qualifier must have at least 1 year of actual journey level work experience. So you can't waive that. So the most you could get for your experience, for your educational experience to replace that is 3 years. You still need to work as a journeyman for 1 year to qualify. So can military experience be used, right? Because a lot of times military members are electricians or plumbers or that sort of thing in their units. So they can use military experience, um, but a lot of times you need to remember that the programs that it's not gonna give you all of it, but we're gonna go into detail what they're gonna ask for. So one of the advantages for if you're a veteran is they're gonna expedite your processing, which means make it faster. They're just gonna review all of your transfer of military experience. They're gonna check exactly what you did in the military. They're gonna ask for your training and education. Um, they're gonna check if it's acceptable proof of your service, right? If you got your DD 214 orders, they got your military orders, they got your um, enlisted record brief, officer record brief. It all depends on what level you were at, what you did too. Um, they're gonna check your training, that sort of thing, and if you have any sealed education transcript, right? Maybe you went through like some sort of like college program over there in the military, they'll check that as well. But if you're a veteran, your work experience can qualify you to get a better to get your 4 years shortened down to let's say maybe 2 years or something. And obviously, if you have like some sort of training, it's even better, and it'll be a faster process for you. So, what are the contractor's license classifications? So, I'm not going to go into super detail on what all these are because I'm going to do it in some following slides, but I'm going to give you guys the rundown on what the CSLB is going to require you to know. So, a Class A is a general engineering contractor. So, whenever you think of a general engineer contractor, that is any contractor that's working with involving fixed works, requires specialized engineering knowledge. So remember that most of the time it's going to be government, it's going to be public, it's going to be they're going to be working for like government agencies, that sort of thing. So highways, bridges, pipelines, they're going to be grading, utilities, infrastructure. So pretty much heavy civil and engineering work. Okay. So typically a general A will never work on homes. They're never going to work on condos, on commercial properties unless it's like connected to some sort of government like I don't know, government like project or something, but never for any people other than government or public agencies. If they do work for like a I don't know, like a commercial property, it'll typically be when like it's involved with some sort of um, connection to a government project, like a road, I don't know, like a government building where I don't know they got like missiles or something, right? It's not gonna be for people who are homeowners and that sort of thing. So Class B, and this would be known as a general building contractor. They work on structures that require at least two unrelated building trades, right? So they work on homes, they work on commercial properties, they work at sometimes government and public office project works. So whenever they do a lot of times like prevailing wage, that sort of thing, they work there too. So remember that they can work public. The only difference is like Class B will be for like buildings and structures, right? It's not going to be for like roads. It's not going to be for piping, infrastructure, that sort of thing. So the reason it says two unrelated building trades, because the actual job of a general contractor, the job for that contractor is for him or her to run a project and to hire out work. The general is not meant to do all the work themselves, right? Or have employees that are, qualified to do all the work. That's not the way the law or the CSLB holds the B for. That's not what it was meant for to be. So it was meant for you to have two licenses or more working on a project, because remember that a general contractor is only meant to do framing and carpentry. They're supposed to build the shell of the home and then sub out all the rest of the work. That's what a general is supposed to be. So now, if a general wants to do, let's say, all of it, and they have the people and the power to do that, they need to be able to get two more licenses aside from their general B to qualify, to legally be allowed to do that. Most of the time, generals don't do that. They just go ahead and do the work themselves, so they sub out. Or if they got like a guy that knows some electrical or a guy that knows some plumbing, that sort of thing, they'll just use their own guys. But that's not the way it was supposed to be. So the CSLB, I want to say about 4 years, like 5, 6 years back, they created a new class of general contractors. So they call them Class B-2. So this is known as a residential remodeling contractor. And it's the difference between the General B General and the General B-2 is in the name itself. It's residential remodeling. Okay. So what that contractor does is it works on existing residential wood frame structures. Projects must be non-structural, which means the project that the beast dash two can work on, they cannot be changing the layout of the structure itself. Okay, it might be just, hey, knock down this non-supporting wall and make it an open space, as long as they're not moving anything structural. They can change windows, they can change the garage door, they can do that sort of thing, but they cannot build out a home unless they're a regular general B. All right. This license requires three unrelated trade contractors to be working on a project, okay? So remember that a General B, regular general building contractor, only requires two. A General B-2, residential remodeling contractor, requires three. And obviously residential remodels only. They cannot be non-structural, right? So they cannot change layouts. They cannot do any of that. Which in my opinion, I do not recommend anybody get this one, only because if you ever want to do something, if you want to go into big bucks, you need to get a General B, no matter what. So a Class C license, this is what most people are going to be applying for. This is known as a specialty contractor. The work requiring a specific skill or trade. Principal business involves one specialized trade. Manufacturers are considered contractors if they do on-site construction, alteration, or repair. So examples of this would be plumbing, electrical, painting, roofing, HVAC, that sort of thing. And obviously there's like 40 something licenses, so there's more to it, right? There's like landscape, there's I don't know, like waterproofing. There's just so many licenses, honestly. Like it's drywall, that sort of thing. They just know that's known as a Class C specialty contractor. So we're gonna get into other license classifications that the state kind of wants you to know. So if you do asbestos work, right? So if you're an abatement a contractor, that's known as a C-22 asbestos abatement contractor. So the CSLB issues the C-22 license and a separate asbestos certification. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because by law you're required to know this. So a C-22 license, they perform asbestos abatement with no limitations, right? So this is a contractor that goes into a home and they remove asbestos, okay? So if you don't know what asbestos is, it's this old school material that caused like so many illnesses into old tradespeople. A lot of people got injured, not through like physical stuff, but through prolonged exposure. So they got sick, they got lung problems, they got cancer, all this random stuff happening to them. All right, and obviously as a contractor, you're gonna probably, if you go into an old home, you're probably gonna deal with that. So what the state issues for everybody else who isn't a C22 asbestos abatement contractor, they're gonna issue you an asbestos certification, right? So this, you're gonna be certified. That's gonna be it's called a certified non C-22 contractor. And you're gonna be pretty much may only do asbestos work within their existing license classification. So how do you get a C-22 or an asbestos certification? So for you to do that, you must pass a EPA accredited asbestos training course, register with Dodge Asbestos Contractors Registration Unit, and submit an application to the CSLB. And obviously, you're going to show your 4 years of journey level experience and pass the required CSLB's exam. That's to get your C-22 asbestos contractor's license. Now, if you want to get asbestos certified, you're going to have to get an EPA accredited asbestos training course. That means if you're a painter and let's say you run into some asbestos material, that means you can at least work with it, right? Now that you can't remove it, but you could work around it or with it. And that does not mean demo it, okay? It just means you could work around it. And the state is also going to give you a certification, but that certification is not going to be a license for you to work with it. It just means that certification lets you know of the dangers associated with asbestos and lead. And everybody gets that. Once they give you your license, you got like 15 days or something to return that certificate back. And all that does is just once you turn it back, they're gonna give you your final license, your certificate, and they're gonna send you a thing. Okay, you are now licensed to work. Okay. So, other hazardous substance removal. So contractors must obtain a hazardous substance removal and remedial action certification. So requirements for that would be submit a special application, pass a CSLB certification exam. Eligible license classifications for this sort of certificate would be for your Class A, for your Class B, your C36, C12, and your C57. So in some cases, the C61 and the D40 service station equipment. So most contractors won't have to get this unless you're working with like hazardous material. But if you're going to be doing that specialized work, you probably already know about this certification, and you're going to go ahead and apply for it. Most people won't, so I'm not going to go into detail with that. If it's ever brought up, they might ask you who's eligible for that, but I highly doubt they will. But if they do, just remember it's Class B, Class A, 36, 12, and 57. So underground storage tanks, so UST work. So if you do that sort of work, the UST requires the hazardous substance removal certification. Again, who can do what? That'd be your Class A. They may install, remove any underground storage tank, any purpose, any location. The Class B may install, remove UST only if the project qualifies as a B cert classification job and the contractor holds the hazardous substance certificate. So, and if you don't know what this is, just let me, before I go into more detail, all it is like like a waste container, right? Like where you poop, right? A lot of times, like the septic tank. Sorry about that. Like a lot of times, these old homes, like in the middle of nowhere, have septic tanks where a truck will go and pretty much vacuum all that poop out. Pretty much, that's what it is. That's what this light certification, I guess, is certified for. And obviously, there's more things out there. There's more stuff, right? Maybe you're working for like some hazardous material that I don't know, like gasoline or something, and right, that sort of thing. So, if also obviously a plumber is going to work on that, so they're going to be required to have a certification because they're going to install and remove UST that serve a building. It includes service station tanks. So now we're going to talk about how to apply for your license, right? What are the steps? This is nothing crazy, but just to give you guys a rundown, and you guys could check this video out and look at it yourselves too. Go on your website and check it out on your browser, sorry. So the first step would be complete the application. So you're gonna go to the CSLB website, and you're gonna search for the application for original contractor's license. You can do their fill out application, so which means you could fill out all the information on your PC and print it out and it's all filled out, or you could just print a blank page and fill it out with blue or black ink. So identify the qualifier, right? Who's going to be the one applying for the license? So remember that a qualifier is going to be responsible for supervising construction work and meeting the 4-year experience requirement. The qualifier must submit certification of work experience. The step 3 would be review and sign and proofread before submitting. So make sure everything is correct. If you got to get a your business set up beforehand, again, I recommend to do that just so you guys have everything already established before you go through all this process. Because even to get like a corporation or an LLC set up, it might take you a couple days to get all your paperwork and everything filled out, and to make sure no one uses that name, right? You don't want to get in trouble with someone suing you for that. So if the CSLB returns the application as incomplete, so if you mistaked something and something went wrong, you have 90 days to fix it. Okay, remember that the CSLB will typically, whenever they tell you how many days do you have to fix an issue with the CSLB, most of the time it's going to be 90 days. Anything pertaining to the CSLB is 90 days or 3 months, right? It's typically 9 days, but if they give you months, just remember 3 months. Failure to correct any error with the application will pretty much make it delayed, denied, or abandoned. Okay. Now, if everything goes right, you go ahead, sign it, and date it. They're not gonna pretty much bring it back because they're gonna just hold it in progress. So don't worry about that. Yeah. So remember, it's 9 days. Is something if you have something that's misspelled, delayed, or denied, that's it. Okay. So if the qualifier must take one or both exams. So if you may apply for one classification at a time, so that means you can only apply for one license, right? It could be a B, an A, or a C. It doesn't matter, but it could only be one license at a time. So let's say you passed your class B, right? You're a general contractor, and you want to go for one more, or you want to go for 2 more. After you pass your class B, you can do the rest, but it has to be one at a time. And the good thing about that is that you only have to study for one thing, and that would be your trade side of it, right? So if you're a general B and you want to go ahead and get your, I don't know, your electrician's contractor's license, well then go ahead and just practice or read and study up on the electrician side of it, because you don't got to do your law and business anymore because you already have that passed. Now, what fees are going to be submitted, right? So remember what we mentioned again. It's going to be $450 for the application processing fee. It's non-refundable. So that's pretty much if you decide to not do it anymore or you cancel it, that's it. It's not refundable. All right. So if you're going to be a sole proprietor, it's going to be $200. If you're going to be a non-sole proprietor, which would be, remember, a corporation, partnership, LLC, etc., joint venture, that's going to be $350. So if you want to get another additional classification, which is another license, after that it's going to be $150 for every additional classification. Okay, so if you have 3, remember it's going to be like $450 for the fee, $350 most likely because you're going to want to get a corporation for that, and then $150 per each one. So remember that. And obviously you're going to send the application to the Contractor State License Board, the P.O. Box 26000 at Sacramento, California, and that's the zip code. If you pass the exam, right, if everything went well, you passed all the exams, The CSLB will send instructions to submit the initial license fee if you haven't paid so already. They're going to ask you for the required bonds. Remember, they're going to ask you for a $25,000 bond at the minimum for most likely all of them. And if you're a LLC, I'll go into that, what they're going to ask later on. They're going to ask for more information and more money, you could say. They're going to require more bonds. They're going to ask for proof of insurance if you have insurance. So liability insurance or workers' compensation insurance, they're going to ask for that. If you don't have any, you can be an exempt. But you most likely you're going to have to be a sole proprietor, and even then, there's certain classifications that no matter what are going to need a workers' compensation policy. The CSLB may not issue a license until all the requirements are met. So if you do not submit all the information or all the requirements the CSLB tells you to do, they're not going to issue your license. So if the qualifier does not need to take an exam, so that means you get an exam waiver, which is what we were talking about, you may apply for multiple classifications at once, must meet the statutory waiver requirements, and that all depends on what you're applying for. And you may need to submit the same fees and mail the same to the same CSLB address. So the final requirements before the license is issued, as we mentioned before, um, the contractor bond must be in the business name. So the $25,000 bond is going to have to be in whatever name you decide to name your business, your entity, right? Whatever it might be. Additional bonds may be required if you have a responsible managing officer, an RMO, or a responsible managing employee. And we'll go into detail what that is later on. So a bond of qualifying individual must list the qualifier's name plus the business name. So if you decide to have someone else get a license and you guys establish a business, he or she will be known as an RMO. That means he or she's a business officer. So it's more of a supervisory role. If they choose to if you guys choose to get a responsible managing employee, remember that's an employee, not an officer. Um, it's these two things are very different from each other, but they are required and they ask for more bonds when you go that route. I don't recommend that route only because there's no reason why you should do that if you can pass the test. It's too complicated. A lot of times there's problems with people like that. It's not a partnership most of the time when that happens, but if you and if you do a partnership, even worse because it always happens where they get into fights and they split off. So workers' compensation insurance is another thing that they're going to require. So if you have employees, you're going to require it. If you don't have employees, you're going to require an exemption certificate. Remember, we're going to go into detail on where it is required, and that'll be later on. So if the qualifier is a responsible managing employee, they are considered an employee. So if you go, remember what I said, that if you choose to have an RME, they're considered employees. So you do have to get workers' compensation insurance. Now, workers' compensation insurance again is required if you choose to get an RME. So mandatory workers' compensation, even if you have no employees, this is where it's going to be required. Okay. So these classifications require workers' compensation insurance at all times. So even if you're a sole proprietor, right, you work for yourself and you don't have any employees, you don't want to do any crazy stuff with setting up an entity, a business entity, you don't want to do anything, you just want to work for yourself, do your taxes at the end of the year, and just be self-employed. If you do concrete, you need to have workers' compensation. If you do HVAC, you need to have workers' compensation. If you do asbestos work, you need to have it. Roofing and tree services, all these licenses need to have it. Now, if you have an LLC, a corporation, or any other thing than that, you also need to have it. Okay? Remember that only a sole proprietor can be exempt from having workers' compensation. And even then, if he or she falls within those categories of licenses, then they'll still be required even if they don't have employees. So remember that. So who's the qualifier, right? A qualifier is a person listed with the CSLB who meets the experience requirements, passes the required exam, and is legally responsible for the license. So what is the qualifier required to do? The qualifier must pass all required CSLB exams, complete a criminal background check after licensing, directly supervise and control construction operations. This responsibility continues after the license is issued. So, who can be a qualifier? And this is where we're going to go into RMOs and RMEs. Okay. So, a sole ownership, so that would be a qualifier, or a responsible managing employee. That would be also a qualifier. Okay. Or it could be an RME, but we'll go into detail of why they separate that. So, a partnership would be a general partner. That would be, they would call themselves called a qualifying partner or an RME. A corporation, this is where the officer comes into play. So a corporate officer listed with the CSLB, also called a responsible managing officer or an RME. So the only difference between RME and officer is more of a supervisory role, and RME is an employee. They have to be there for a certain amount of time. So for a limited liability company, also known as an LLC, a responsible managing officer or a responsible managing employee. Important rules for an RME. If the qualifier is an RME, right, this is someone who is a responsible managing employee, then they must be a bona fide employee, okay? They are not they can be a supervisory role but most likely they have to be on the field, okay? They cannot qualify for any other active CSLB license, right? Because they gave up their ability to get a license once they certified a certain business. Okay, so remember that this information will be on the test. They must work at the minimum 32 hours per week. Okay, or 80% of the business operating hours, whichever is less. They must be permanently employed or actively involved. So if an RME pretty much licensed a business, and for whatever reason they get in a fight, or maybe I don't know, they're tired of working there, they want something new, and they leave, that business will no longer be certified, and they no longer will be able to contract unless they get an exempt from the CSLB and they get a new person to register that license to be allowed to work. So, can one person qualify for more than one license? Yes. And this will typically fall within the RMO, a responsible managing officer. An RME can only certify one license. Okay, remember that. A responsible managing officer, they can certify more than one license. Okay, so yes, they can, but only if specific conditions are met. What does that mean? They're allowed only if one of these of the following is true. So if the qualifier owns at least 20% equity in each firm, or one firm is a subsidiary or a joint venture of the other parent company, must be licensed. So pretty much, if they buy a business that's and they run it, and the person that bought the business is a responsible managing officer, they can technically pass that same license on to the other business and continue to run it with that parent license company. So, or the firms have the same majority of partnerships, officers, corporations, members, and managers, LLCs. So the absolute limit. So a person may qualify no more than 3 firms in any 1 year period. So the difference between an RME and an RMO, remember that an RME needs to be at work at the minimum 32 hours per week, or 80% of the business operating hours, whichever is less. And they need to be permanently employed and actively involved. Okay, and they could only qualify one business license with their license. Okay, now if you're an RMO, a responsible managing officer, you can technically, I don't want to say give your license, but register a business to do the work of your license as long as you own 20% or more in each firm, and you can't do more than 3 companies in 1 year. So what does that mean? That means that if you have let's say, an electrician's license, right? And you want to have your friends or whatever certified, and they set up a corporation or whatever, and you register the license for that person. And obviously, I'm not exactly sure how this would go. You would have to actually talk to a business school, or maybe a lawyer to set yourself up here. But you technically you could get a paycheck of 20%, right? Every month or every year, whatever I guess you guys decide to get paid of all the profits, and you don't have to work anymore, right? For what? Think about that. You could get paid to lend. I don't want to say lend your license, but I don't even know the proper term for it. But if you can register a business, you could get paid 20% because that's what you got to own at the minimum, right? And by the way, that 20% will probably be on the test. Remember that. Just remember that RMO has to own 20% or more, and they can only qualify 3 firms in a 1 year period. Okay. And if you choose to go the RME or the RMO route, um, my recommendation to you is to actually know who you're doing business with. You don't want to end up getting in trouble. So you want to make sure that you're actually lending your license to an actual like professional, someone that actually does the proper work and doesn't get in trouble with the law. Because at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, the only person getting in trouble, well, I guess that person will get in trouble too, but you're gonna get in trouble, and they're probably gonna take your license away, and probably you're gonna have to get some criminal stuff on your record, even though you had nothing to do with it. So make sure everything is established, there's proper contracts, and everything is certified and signed, and everything is reviewed. Even if you're not an RME and you're not working there full time, every once in a while you do need to go check and actively check the records, check the job sites, make sure everything's running how it's supposed to. So now we talked about some criminal convictions. Remember, I'm going to talk about that now. So, do criminal convictions disqualify a qualifier? So, if you have some sort of record, does it, disqualify you? No, not automatically. So, the CSLB may deny a license if the conviction is substantially related to contractor duties. The CSLB may still issue a license if the applicant shows sufficient rehabilitation. So, if you have gone through your time and you've done everything legit, and as long as you didn't do something heinous and you're not breaking contractor laws, the CSLB can, and they'll probably most likely will give you a license. So again, if you see you don't got any options, you might want to think about this too. This maybe might help you guys out. So will the CSLB acknowledge my application? So will they give you some sort of heads up about it? Yes, they will. The CSLB will give you a letter. That letter will include a 9-digit application fee number. They're going to give you a 4-digit PIN number, and these numbers will give you the ability to track your application status and reference your application in all CSLB communications. So all that means is they're going to give you like a little tracking number. With those numbers, you'll be able to see where your application's at. If you still need more time, if you got if you got something missing, or if they require more information, and they're gonna let you know, right? It's not a long time for you to qualify for all this. Honestly, the state just wants everybody to be certified. So, and they want you to pay taxes. So, the state isn't here to like deny you a license. Honestly, if you can pass a driver's license, if you can study that book of the driver's license California gives out at the DMV, and you can pass this contractor's license. Honestly, it's not hard. It's not hard at all. You guys just gotta focus. If you guys give yourself like 3 months of like, even if you don't study every day, let's say it's like 3 times out of the week for an hour or two, 4 times out of the week for an hour or two, dude, you guys are gonna pass it. So don't think this is hard. And right now, I know this information is kind of generic, but believe it or not, this information pretty much takes up for like 35 to 40% of the actual questions. So you guys can see that it's so repetitive. It's not even hard. It's just remembering this information down. That's all it is. Now, if you find this repetitive, just know that in the future slides, it's going to be more in detail on everything. And this is just the basic information to start off, so you guys could get the rundown on how everything's going to roll. Because I'm going to get so many questions on this. Like, can I take the test again? Hey, if this happens, what? It's not hard. Just study. All right. So if my application is not accepted, right? If they return your application is considered incomplete or insufficient, they're going to return it to you, right? And obviously they're going to ask you to make the corrections. Then they're going to give you 90 days to resubmit it. Remember that the CSLB, most of the time, whenever you're dealing with them, they're going to give you 90 days. Okay, 90 days. You're going to get a question on your test automatically. I already know this because that's what happened to me. Just remember that if it's concerning the CSLB, it's going to be 90 days. Okay. Anything else it's different, but the CSLB itself, it's 90 days. If you do not return the corrected application within 90 days, the application becomes void, and pretty much you cannot reinstate that same application. You'll have to submit a new application, and they're going to charge you again for a new processing fee, which is probably like the $450 again. So, can the CSLB refund the application fee? No. The $450 application fee is non-refundable. The fee pays for processing, not approval. So no refund, even if the application is denied or becomes void. So if you do not correct your license when they send it back, obviously it's non-refundable. So you're out of luck. So this is why I say I have everything established legit before you do this. Okay. Are there other requirements before a license is issued? Yes. Again, remember, they're going to ask you for some fingerprints, right? It's mandatory. That's used for a criminal background check. They're just going to run down your fingerprints. This is going to check the California Department of Justice. So they're just going to check that you don't got no records on you. You don't got a warrant for your arrest. They don't got that sort of thing. The FBI is also going to check you, obviously, because they're not going to want some criminal from all over the state or the country, I should say, coming to California and then trying to establish a business. They don't want people with fraud. If you have any convictions or you've been arrested and you're out of prison or jail or whatever, as long as, like I said before, if you didn't do anything crazy and you're not breaking contractor law too as well, they're going to review it and most likely you're going to get your license. I mean, the only people that I know that probably wouldn't get licensed are like murderers, people who have done things to kids, like assaults with like deadly things, that sort of thing. Those most likely those aren't. And even then, like the assault part, if you have like a record of why you did it, and you can kind of play your cards right. As long as they see that you have the proper rehabilitation, you most likely get it too. But everything else, like most likely not. And drug charges too. They don't want people with a lot of like drug issues going to people's homes. But again, if it's something small, they're not going to trip. So the CSLB sends fingerprints instructions after receiving your application. So after they receive your application, that's the first thing they're going to send you because they want to run, they want to check you right and they want to see everything's correct. The CSLB open book exam. So remember what I told you guys? They're going to certify you. Doesn't mean you're going to be allowed to work on that. It just means you understand the hazards. So it's open book. They literally give you the answers on the back of the little booklet, and all you do is return that paper back, or I don't know if they let you submit it through their website, but I know you got to return it back through mail before you get your license. So all it does is it covers the asbestos abatement standards. The CSLB cannot issue a license until this exam is completed. And I know I know this information literally sounds like generic, but believe it or not, this will be on the test. Like they'll even tell you. And by the way, this is all through memory, so I'm not trying to copy or get in trouble with the CSLB here. But they might ask you, what is required, before they give you a license, right? They'll give you need to get your C22 asbestos abatement. You need to get, I don't know, you need to get like $1 million general liability insurance for whatever. And they'll tell you, but let's say the question is specific about asbestos, right? What do you need to get before you get your license? When talking about asbestos, just remember that you need to get your asbestos open book exam. Is an exam required for a contractor license? Yes, remember, you got to pass two licenses, the law and business and the trade exam. If you get a C61 limited specialty, you do not get to get your trade exam. I don't know that many people that have this. It's very specialized, but I guess if you're going for this, you don't need to take the exam. And we're going to talk about the licenses themselves in following slides, so stay tuned for that because it's very specialized work that they do. So, exam accommodations. So, a CSLB provides reasonable accommodations under the ADA. You must notify the CSLB of your needs, submit the special accommodation request for examinations, and they'll be available through the website or at any CSLB office. So, I'm trying to not to say so much. Sorry. A CSLB is not required to accommodate if you do not request this. That means that if you do not request this information, they don't have to accommodate anything for you. If you have a problem with, let's say, language, you need to accommodate that. Or maybe you have mobility issues, you also need to let them know too. So, are exams offered in other languages? All exams are offered in English. Spanish versions are available for 10 common exams. Spanish our exams are available. So, if you speak Spanish, you're allowed to technically take this exam pretty much in Spanish. So that would be your law and business, the general B, so general building, concrete, drywall, flooring, landscape, painting and decorating, plumbing, roofing, ceramic, mosaic, tile. If you request a translator for these exams, you must submit the Spanish. You must take the Spanish version. That means that if you're requesting to get a translator for you and you fit within these exams, you can take that exam in Spanish. So you don't have to speak English, right? And I know that might, tickle some feathers of some other people, but it is what it is. There's a large community here that speaks Spanish. There's a large community here in the U.S. in California that speak Mandarin, that speak Korean, uh, Vietnamese, that sort of thing. So, and a lot of times, other people feel comfortable when other people speak their language. You cannot hate on someone like that for trying to improve their community, right? So, if I was, for example, I'm Hispanic, I'm Mexican, but if I was, I don't know, say Chinese, and I have people who don't speak Chinese or Mandarin or whatever they speak, or Cantonese or whatever, right? And I can have a person, even if he's white, black, Asian, Chinese, I don't know, Middle Easterner, but they can speak Chinese or Mandarin. I'd probably feel more comfortable with that. So, a lot of times it's the convenience of it. Uh, all right. What if the qualifier needs a translator? The CSLB may allow a translator to read the exam, right? Translator must be approved by the CSLB in advance. So if you bring your own, they're gonna check them out and make sure they're not gonna let you cheat. Or you get their own in-house translator as well. I don't know how that process is, but it's there. Request this by checking the translator box in the application. The CSLB will send further instructions. When will CSLB grant an exam waiver? So the CSLB may waive the trade exam if anyone applies. So if you are currently qualified for a license in good standing, if you're doing the same qualifications. So if you're going to be an RMO and you want to certify another business, you have to set up the application fee and everything, do the whole application, and they're going to waive you the exam. I guess that's what I was trying to say before. If you were qualified within the last 5 years within the same classification and good standing, you'll also be waived. If you pass both exams, that's a law in business and trade within the last 5 years, you'll also be waived from the exam. If I'm eligible for a waiver, do I still list experience? Yes. So if you are getting your exam waived, you still need to put your work experience. You need to show your 4 years of work journey level experience in the last 10 years. You need to have everything certified and verified from whoever's going to be signing off. And again, that person that verifies it, they all need to be um, there for you. They should have observed you do the work yourselves, right? You can't just pass it on to somebody else. And again, it's going to be your employer, supervisor, fellow employee, journey person, licensed contractor, business union representative, building inspector, architect or engineer, and business associate, homeowners or clients if you are self-employed. If I fail one or both exams, can I retake them? Yes. So right now, when I did my exam, I did it through the state. They have now changed from state through a private business. It's called PSI. I know that this company does a lot of trades for the state, for government agencies, for the cities, for the counties. So PSI, and they have a lot of locations, by the way. So most likely, if, it might even be like 15 minutes from your house, 10 minutes. That's how many locations they're all over the place. So if you fail them, you have 18 months to pass all required exams. So they give you 5 years, right? So they call that exam results are valid for 5 years. So if you pass one exam and fail the other, you have 5 years to pass the other exam that you failed. So think about that. That's such a long time. So you have 18 months to pass, but the exams they stay valid, right? So let's say you failed, I don't know, like your law and business, and you pass your trade. You got 18 months to pass both of them, but if not, they'll still be in the system for 5 years. Are there penalties for disclosing exam contacts? Yes, and this is why I say I don't give you guys questions and answers that I believe are there, right? I'll give you guys randomized questions because honestly, I don't want to get in trouble. So the CSLB strictly enforces exam securities, actions that violate exam security. So you may not share test questions and answers with schools, individuals, businesses, or any other CSLB exam staff. Remove exam materials from test sites, including written notes, photos, or audio or video recordings. Communicate with other test takers during the exam. Copy answers or allow someone to copy yours, which I don't even know how they would because it's all computerized now and it's all randomized. Uh, processes any Process any written material provided not provided by the CSLB. Take exam for someone else. Again, it's illegal unless it's unless you get it certified through an RMO, right? And you get that exam waived. That's a different story. So if you commit any of these crimes, penalties for violating exam security, violations can result in serious consequences, including automatic exam failure, loss of exam fees, a misdemeanor charge, which may include a $500 fine, up to $10,000 in damages, court costs, county jail sentences, and ineligibility to apply for a CSLB license for at least 1 year from the exam date. All right, requirements. So we're going to talk about issuing a license, right? The requirements for active licenses only. So if you have an active license, this is how it's going to run down. You're going to need a contractor bond. Remember what we talked about, a $25,000 contractor's bond or a cashier's check. That's the other option that I gave you guys. It's going to be stored in a separate bank account just in case. Bank account. Okay. So you're going to need a workers' compensation insurance. Required if any of the following apply. So if you have if you have any employee, right? If you pay that employee $1, they need to have workers' compensation. If you employ a home improvement salesperson, if that's a person that goes around home to house to house, or I don't know, commercial property, those people are considered home improvement salesperson. They sell the work for you. You need to have workers' compensation even for that person. And if you are an RME, responsible managing employee, or you have one within your company, they also need to be covered under workers' compensation insurance. If you hold any of these classifications, even if you do not have employees, you need to have workers' compensation. So if you have a concrete, HVAC, asbestos abatement, roofing, or C61 and D49 tree service, they all need workers' compensation. If you do not have any worker and you are legally and eligibly allowed to, get an exemption from it, you may file an exemption only if you have no employees, or if the if the qualifier is not an RME and you do not hold any of the following licenses. So if that fits your role, you can be exempt from workers' compensation, which is what I have. I don't have any employees. I don't have any of that. So I'm exempt from that. Additional requirements for corporations and LLCs. This is when I talked about having, even if you don't have any employees, if you have any of these business entities, you will be required to have a lot more things. Okay. So if you're a corporation or an LLC, you need a thing called the bond of qualifying individuals. This is different from a contractor's bond. You need to have that, but you also need an additional bond for each RME and each RMO owning less than 10% of the company. Okay? Now, for extra requirements, this is for LLCs, you need an additional $100,000 LLC worker bond in addition to the 25,000 contractor bond. Okay? Now the liability insurance for that for an LLC would be $1 million aggregate for five or fewer personnel. So if you have five or fewer workers, you need to have a million aggregate for that. Okay, for liability insurance. That's be general liability. And for that, you would also need 100,000 per additional person after that. And the maximum that you would have to get is 5 million. So there are more costs to having an LLC. So active versus inactive license. So very testable. That means most likely it will come up. So active licenses may bid and may contract, but must have a $25,000 contractor bond, bond of qualifying individual if required, a workers' compensation or certification of exempt if required. LLCs must also have a $100,000 bond, remember that, per additional worker, as long as it's more than five, and the 1 million liability insurance. And for inactive licenses, pretty much any license that is inactive may not bid or contract. Okay. Now, why would you have an inactive license? That means, let's say you're out of the business for 5 years, right? There's no reason you should be paying for any extra like bonds and any insurance if you're not going to use it. And the only drawback is you cannot bid or contract work. So what does that mean? It means you shouldn't be trying to get work if you decide to make your status of the license inactive. So they do not need contractor bonds. They do not need a bond of qualifying individuals. They do not need workers' compensation insurance or the exemption because it's inactive, of course. You inactivate when you want to keep the license but not operate. Now, I don't know anybody that does that, but I'm pretty sure that if you're done with being a contractor, but you want to leave it there just in case, right? You never know when you want to go back. You might want to do that. So what proof of license will I receive? So the CSLB sends wall certificates and a pocket card with your license name, your business number, your classification, and your issue date and expiration date. Legal requirements. So wall certificate must be displayed at your main office. So if you have an actual business office, a business shop, you should have it there on your wall in a plaque or something. The pocket card you should always carry. This is for pretty much when you want to solicit work or you want to talk to customers. And I've had it before too, where somebody from like the city or the state or something, like they come by and they tell you, "Hey, are you licensed?" And I tell them yes. And the first thing they're gonna do is tell me, "Give me your license number." Or if you have your pocket card, show it to me. That's the first thing they're gonna do, and that's when you can pull it out. And as long as you're doing everything legit, they'll just be like, "Okay, get it. All right, I'm out of here. Thanks for your time, whatever." That's how it goes. So typically, it's 5 to 10 days after they issue your license that you'll receive that. So that's when you'll know. You'll probably know beforehand, but it does take 5 to 10 days for you to get your physical certificate and your pocket license. So how long does the license stay valid? So whenever you do your official first initial license, it is valid for 2 years and expires on the last day of the month. So 2 years later. Now, what does that mean, right? So that means if you get your license issued in January 15, 2025, that means your license will expire in January 31st of 2027. Just remember that it's 2 years on the last day of the month that you got your license. And obviously, they're not gonna tell you, they're not gonna give you a random. This will be on the test, by the way, right? But they're not gonna give you like a random number of of you, right? They're gonna specifically tell you, hey, you get a license on. I don't know. They're not gonna try to trick you, right? I know some months are shorter than others. Some months have like 31 days, others have 30, that sort of thing. They're not gonna try to trick you. They're gonna just tell you if if you get your license on January and it's 2 years, they might give you this example, right? On the 15th, 31st, but they're not going to tell you January 15, 2025, and then February, uh, 21, 2027. They're not going to tell you that. So renewals for licenses are pretty simple. Active licenses are always 2 years. Inactive licenses are always every 4 years. Just remember that like I said before, this information might sound repetitive and it might sound generic, but this is literally like I want to say like almost 45, 50% of the exam. Well, probably 100%, honestly, because I got so many questions. I got like double questions when I did my test. So I'm gonna talk about the actual descriptions of the classifications now because I know that most people are going to be confused on what I mentioned before. So I'm going to go with the actual definition of the CSLB, and this will be on the test too. Okay, so just remember that a general A, that'd be known as an engineering license. A general engineering contractor is a contractor whose principal contracting business is in connection with fixed works requiring specialized engineering knowledge and skill, including the following divisions or subjects: irrigation, drainage, power, water supply, flood control, inland waterways, harbors, docks, wharves, shipyards and ports, dams, hydroelectric projects, levees, river control, reclamation works, railroad, highways, streets and roads, tunnels, airports and airways, sewers and sewage disposal plants and systems, waste reduction plants, bridges, overpasses, underpasses, and other similar works, pipelines and other systems for the transmission of petroleum and other liquids or gaseous substance, parks, playgrounds, and other recreational works, refineries, chemical plants, and similar and industrial plants requiring specialized engineering knowledge and skill, powerhouses, power plants, other utilities plants, installations, mines, metallurgical plants, land leveling, earth moving projects, excavation, grading, trenches, paving, surfacing works, and cement and concrete works in connection with the above mentioned fixed works. Just remember that most of the time there's going to be government work. If they ask you, just remember that a general's never going to work on ports, on dams, hydroelectric projects, rivers. They're not going to work on that. All right. And the reason I brought this one up too is just so you guys remember. This is the one that always confuses people. All right, General B, building general contractor. Remember, works on structures that support or shelter people, animals, and property. Requires at least two unrelated building trades. Framing and carpentry can be done alone, but framing and carpentry does not count towards the two trade requirement. Remember that. What can a B contractor do? Take prime or subcontract for projects requiring two or more unrelated trades, framing or carpentry by itself. Remember that. What can a B contractor, what can a cannot do? That means they cannot take a one trade job unless they hold the correct C license or they subcontract a licensed specialty contractor. Count framing or carpentry as one of the two required trades. And let me bring this up for you because this is going to be important. This will be on the test. No contractor, whether it's A or B, can do C16 fire protection or C57. Okay, it's illegal for them to touch that. They no matter what have to subcontract that work to someone who's licensed. Unless that same General B contractor or General A contractor are themselves licensed in those two licenses, or they subcontract obviously to those two types of specialists. So just remember that, okay? Now, General B-2, known as the residential remodeling contractor, exist. They work on existing residential wood frame structures. They non-structural remodels. Remember that they cannot touch anything that's structural within the home. Contracts requiring the General B regular needs at the minimum two unrelated trades for them to do a project, unless they are doing the framing or the carpentry or they're subcontracting out. The General B needs three or more unrelated contract trades. Okay, so allowed work would be examples of this. A B-2 may include drywall, finished carpentry, flooring, painting, plastering, roof repair that is not structural, siding, tile. Those are just some examples. So installing or replacing electrical fixtures, that would be your basic generic stuff like switches and outlets, fans, not the electrical boxes themselves. So plumbing fixtures, the same thing. Toilets, sinks, tubs, mechanical fixtures, grills, filters, exhaust fans, etc. So the major restrictions on this sort of license, they cannot do structural work. So what does that mean? That means foundations, load-bearing walls, roof framing, footings, etc. So no full system installations. Remember that I said like the electrical circuit boxes, right? They can't work on complete full system installations such as electrical, plumbing, or mechanical. Minor alterations are allowed only to support fixture replacements. So that means if maybe I don't know they're changing like a fan, right? And let's say there's rotten 2x4s up there or something, or maybe they don't have proper support for that fan. Well, they can get up there and change some stuff, but it's only if it's meant, for like the actual alteration. It's not meant to do anything real supporting in the home. So it must involve three unrelated trades. Specialty trades not allowed without proper licenses. So remember that General B, it's pretty much the same thing. They can't do 16 fire protection and C57. The C52 or the C22, I should say, asbestos, they shouldn't even be doing that either. But this is just what the Class B-2 kind of the study guide the CSLB offered says. But I would probably put those three things on the General B as well. But if he comes on the test, if this comes out in there, just remember it's the C16 fire protection and C57 well drilling for B, and for B-2 just include the C22. Specialty contractor, also known as a Class C. So it is known as a contractor whose work involves one specific trade requiring specific skills. Examples of that would be painting, plumbing, electrical, roofing, HVAC, flooring, tile, landscaping, fire extinguisher systems, carpet, resilient flooring, traffic control, lane closures, flagging. Manufacturers are also considered contractors if they install or repair products on site.